So good afternoon, everyone. It is 1 o'clock, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. I am Misty Hicks. I am one of the co-founders of Wonders and Worries and also the Director of Outreach for our Registered Provider Program. And I would like to welcome you to our third WonderChat. So we're so glad you could attend with us. Welcome back to those who have participated in our last two, or one or both, and welcome to those who are new to joining us. As always, I hope this finds each of you holding up the best you can in these sort of ever-changing times of the new kind of world we're living in. So I'm glad you could join us. I look forward to our Friday connections with our colleagues. So before we get started, I just want to kind of go through some of the housekeeping. I know you probably have heard this before, but when you enter, your audio and your video are muted automatically, so we don't see you, don't worry. For this session, we will not use the chat feature, but we will use the question and answer feature. You'll see that on your screen. So if you have a question, you can go ahead and type that in. I'll be monitoring those, and I might cluster those or collect those together and ask those verbally to our presenters, or I may type an answer in. So I'll be monitoring those and make sure that we answer you in the best way we can and as quickly and efficiently as we can. At the end of the session, there will be a QR code. You will go ahead, you can scan that, and that'll link you to the evaluation. After you complete the evaluation, the survey, and submit that, you will receive a certificate of attendance for this session. The session is, you're able to use these for PDUs if you've listened live. So if you're listening to us right now and watching as we go through, then you'll get the link to the survey. You can QR code it, or you'll get a follow-up email tomorrow with the link to the survey in it. Complete the survey. Your certificate should bounce back to you. So please let me know if you have any problems or questions with that. The survey will be available until 4/21, which is Tuesday. So please do it before Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern. At that point, the survey needs to close. And then finally, the session will be recorded. So if you have a colleague who wanted to listen to it after the fact, if you listen to it non-live though, there's no PDU accessibility. So just so they're aware of that, but it's there for future reference. So the recorded session will be on our website. And then additionally, any resources our speakers talk about today or anything we want to share with you after the fact, and a transcript of our Q&A will also be available on our website by the end of the weekend. Give me a little bit of time to get it all together for you. So with that said, we're gonna move forward. I would like to introduce our amazing speakers for today. Kim Fryer is our Clinical Program Director and a Child Life Specialist, of course, at Wonders and Worries. And Cindy Fitzpatrick is our Bilingual Child Life Specialist at Wonders and Worries, one of them, and an Associate Professor of Practice at University of Texas, Austin. And they're going to share today with us some ideas and thoughts about connecting with families and parents, having conversations with parents when you might not be working with their children in person, and then also some technology challenges or working with families who might not have the same amount of access as others during this time of social distancing and isolation. So with that said, we know that everyone's situation and setting is different, so we hope you can glean the most important and most relevant pieces of what they share today and apply those to your practice, or even maybe give you some new ideas of things that you can do moving forward. So welcome, and with that, I'd like to turn it over to Kim.
Great. Hello, everyone. So glad to see you on the other side of the screen. And first, I just want to thank all of you for being here today and giving me a reason to shower and put on makeup and feel like an actual person. I don't know how many of you are keeping with routines. I've done okay, but not great. I have days when I'm just in my workout clothes all day long. So thank you for encouraging me to get dressed and be presentable. So I want to jump in and talk about our work with parents. We're going to be talking about how we are supporting parents when we can't, of course, see children face-to-face right now, and in situations where we can't virtually connect with children and teens, where we can have that connection with parents and support and guide them. And Cindy's going to be going into a lot more information around some specific activities, but I want to just give you some ideas about how we've always worked with parents at Wonders and Worries, and then ways we've, I guess, added to that work as we've all been going through the coronavirus pandemic. So parent consults and parent involvement at Wonders and Worries prior to COVID-19. We always start with parents. We've always done a lot of phone consultation initially with parents and guiding parents who maybe don't ever become clients of ours or official, we call them clients versus patients, official clients of ours. So phone support initially has been something that we do regularly. We now have a helpline that many of you may be aware of that is specifically focused on that piece. And then we've always started with parents when a family does want to do an intake or we've determined that it's a good fit, then we'll always meet with parents first and do an intake, and usually those are done in person, but we can do those over the phone. And now we've been doing those virtually with the added video component, and we've learned how much we enjoy that added input versus just talking with the parents over the phone for the intake. Going forward, when we can be in person again, if we're not able to see a parent face-to-face for any reason, I know our staff has decided we want to try to do the virtual connection instead of just the phone connection, do the video connection as well. And then prior to COVID-19, with parents, we've regularly, I guess, updated them as we're working with their child. Many of you may be aware, but Wonders and Worries has a copywritten curriculum that builds a real strong foundation for children to cope. And so as we go through our curriculum sessions with children and teens, we're updating parents along the way, letting them know what we're doing with their child or teen and giving them opportunities to ask questions and share concerns from home. But it may be somewhat minimal as we go through those sessions with children and teens, and our focus really is on those sessions and that time with the children. And then with parents, we regularly have a follow-up consultation and assessment and plan going forward. So how has this changed in the midst of COVID-19? Well, it honestly hasn't changed all that much, other than we've added a lot more time with parents, and especially with families that we're going to be talking about today, families who don't have the opportunity for us to connect virtually with their children. We're just doing a lot more consultation over the phone. And really what I'm seeing is breaking it down into smaller chunks and connecting more frequently. So additional phone, text, and email communication. And we do have a phone system where we are able to text from our work phone. And that's really been helpful. So many families, so many parents, so many individuals are used to texting now. And so for like quick communication, for scheduling, or just heads up, I emailed you something, that's been really helpful. Or can we schedule a phone call? That's been really helpful. So it's just been increased. And I will say that for us going into this pandemic, we were well situated in terms of already being very comfortable with phone communication with parents. I don't know how many of you regularly communicated with parents via phone or email or text before now. I know in the years that I was a hospital-based child life specialist, most of my communication, if not all, the majority was in person with parents. And that may be true for most of you. And so this whole communication over the phone probably feels really different. And so I want to just jump in and share a few thoughts around that. So self-awareness and self-disclosure. I know we know about self-awareness as child life specialists, and I just want to reiterate, especially during this time, that we want to be aware of what's happening for us emotionally, just what's happening for us in all realms, physically, cognitively, mentally, emotionally, before we call a parent, before we jump into an interaction with a parent. Our worlds, for I think all of us, are really much more fluid between what's happening in our home life, family life, personal life, and then jumping into a work situation, especially if you're working from home full time, which that's what we're doing. So I can give an example of a time, this was before COVID-19, but I should not have called a parent when I called a parent, because it was the end of my day. I was done. I was tired. I was mentally exhausted. I didn't have a lot of patience. And I made the decision to call a parent who I knew going in was a parent who needed to share lots of stories, didn't always focus on our mission at Wonders and Worries, like could easily go on tangents. And in that interaction, I redirected her more quickly and more kind of strongly than I normally would have. And it caused her to kind of realize that and to feel guilty about going off on a tangent. And I felt bad after that interaction. And so it was just a learning for me. What I was able to do with that interaction is follow up later and just say, you know, I wasn't myself when I called you earlier. I was really tired, and I just apologized for, you know, not being as patient as I wish I had been. So self-awareness, it is absolutely okay to not make a phone call at a time when you realize you just don't have that ability to focus on that call and be fully present with that parent. And it is also okay to go back and apologize. And so the self-disclosure piece is part of this too. Given that we're talking with parents from home so much, it's a lot more difficult to not have, you know, a dog come in the room, or maybe your own child, or noises. And so just being a little more comfortable with, oh, that's my dog. And if they're asking questions, answering their questions, and then of course, shifting back to the focus being on them. The way I think about it is be authentic, be yourself, and, you know, don't feel like you have to be so stoic and be like, well, I can't answer that question. And then just shift the focus and attention back to them. So some of the common concerns that we see expressed by parents that we're regularly talking with them about, talking with children about difficult topics, helping children understand and cope with changes and losses, managing or changing the child's or teen's emotions or behaviors. This is one that a parent's like, can you help my child stop doing this thing? Can you help me help my child stop doing whatever it is, this behavior, or start doing, you know, start pitching in more at home because I don't have the energy. And then helping parents determine if a child or teen's reactions are normal or if they're cause for concern. And I'm going to share a couple stories about those, but let me shift to the next slide, because I want to kind of jump in on, related to those topics, some of the tips that I have found. And these are things, these tips for guiding parents are things that I use almost daily. It is almost a daily conversation that I have with parents where they're asking, should I tell my child something? Or I want to protect my child. And so helping them shift that natural instinct to protecting their child to focusing on protecting their relationship with their child. And so I'll regularly say, I know that you wish that the situation is different and that you could change it for your child. But the reality is the situation is happening whether you are talking with your child about it or not. And so honor that instinct to protect by shifting your focus on protecting the trust that you've built with your child and protecting that communication and that relationship, so your child doesn't have to deal with the situation alone and in isolation from you. And then shifting their focus from making their child happy to helping their child cope with the realm of human emotion. And one example that I give, this is a true example, but years ago when my son was younger, we had gone to Disney World, and at the end of the day, we were just talking about how was your day, and my son was 5, and he was like, well, we didn't get to go on this ride, and the lines were so long, and it was hot. And I'll often say to parents, if your child isn't happy at Disney World, that's a really good sign that we can't control our children's happiness. But what we can control is the tools that they have. We can add to their toolbox in helping them cope with the realm of human emotion. So that's just a tip you may use with parents. And then always building parents up, which I know you all do this. You do this naturally. But just helping them know that my goal is for them to trust their instincts. They have the most knowledge about their children. I just want to add my professional experience, my expertise to their knowledge and their instincts. So a couple examples that I'll give with recent conversations I've had with parents. So a mom called me. This is a mom that we've worked with for many years. Has a metastatic cancer, ongoing treatment. And she called and she said, my daughter is not coping well. We've had lots of losses with the COVID situation. Her husband had lost her job. They were supposed to do an embryo implant, but they needed to put on hold. So they were all grieving and dealing with a lot of loss. And she said, our 7-year-old is not coping well. She's getting upset every day and she's running to her room. She's having meltdowns, and she's like, I just want to go through days where she doesn't have meltdowns. So I just said, tell me more about her meltdowns. What happens? So she said, she'll be doing something, and then if something doesn't go her way, she'll run to her room. And so I said, well, tell me more about what happens when she goes to her room. Well, she plays music, or she colors, or she plays. And then I said, well, tell me what happens, when she comes out of her room. Well, she'll just at some point come and rejoin the family. And so I was just really able to reframe that for this mom and help her recognize all the things that she's clearly doing well, and all the things that this young girl is doing to help her cope. So I was just able to reframe that's a sign of actually really healthy coping. And having a meltdown every day can actually be something that, is very normal in these times. So that's just one example of putting what we know and how, what we know about parents and building them up into practice. Parenting tools that we have available that you can all access and share with your parents: a reflective listening handout, a limit setting handout, which I want to give all props to Gary Landreth and the team at University of North Texas. And that limit setting handout comes from his reflective listening, the ACT process, and the limit setting process. And then with some added information that we've kind of added from our Wonders and Worries lens. And then we have developmental information, which I know you all have developmental information. But the other thing that we're regularly talking with parents about is that, is this something that I should be concerned about? Is this normal for my child or teen? And another example I can give for that is a dad that I was talking with over the past several days, whose wife died unexpectedly. She was going through cancer treatment, but then she had a very unexpected brain bleed. And he had called. We haven't worked with this family before. This was a brand new call for us. And he had called seeking guidance for helping his 13-year-old son and his 18-year-old son say goodbye. So I guided them through that, and then he called. I checked back in. I called him back and was asking how things were going. And he said, I don't know if I should be concerned, but my 13-year-old is sleeping with a teddy bear. And so I was, of course, able to just really normalize this and validate that this was a healthy thing, and just go through that process of helping him recognize how his 13-year-old was grieving and that connection with his mom and the comfort, and of course talking about normal regression. So let me shift to talking about empowering parents to facilitate in-home sessions, and then we'll be getting to the activities, which I know everybody loves. So at Wonders and Worries, we have utilized family sessions over the years, but primarily we have utilized family sessions for legacy building, memory making, more end-of-life or anticipating end-of-life situations. And most of the time, those family sessions have been with our child life specialist present, helping to facilitate either in the home or at one of our offices. And then we broadened it a little bit, and the sweet picture that you see on the screen of this family is a family that has been involved in a study that we're doing. We're calling it our Advanced Cancer Study. But we added a family session to our curriculum in our Advanced Cancer Study with the focus of helping families create legacies, create memories, but also helping with family communication and engaging all members of the family, because we really wanted to pull in, make sure that the ill parent and the healthy parent were all interacting, together as a family. And then our child life specialists are present during this family session, and they are assessing further and helping to guide and give additional tools to parents. But now in the midst of COVID-19, what we're doing and what you'll hear Cindy talking about is guiding parents to have family sessions that we are not present for. We're doing, pre and post support to parents, but it's really a lot more along the lines of, for those of you who are familiar with filial therapy or child-parent relationship training, and many of you may not be familiar. With filial therapy, you can Google filial therapy. I have a number of resources, but my resources are honestly really out of date. Child-parent relationship training is a really involved, wonderful class that we used to teach in full at Wonders and Worries. But the gist is empowering parents to be the ones facilitating these therapeutic experiences, therapeutic activities, therapeutic games with their children at home. So we're just doing little pieces of that right now and really just exploring and experimenting like all of you are with what is it like to guide parents, have them facilitate the activity at home because we can't be there and we can't connect with them virtually, and then process with them afterwards. So let me turn it over to Cindy to tell you more.
Kim, actually, before we go over to Cindy, there was a question, and I know you alluded to the family activity from the Advanced Cancer Study in the picture.
Yes.
Jerry was asking, what is written in the center of the handprint activity the family is holding up?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, it has all their names. I know it has their family names, and I think it says, I'll have to look because I've done several, I think it says Stronger Together. There's families have chosen kind of different things, and some have said like always connected, our hearts are always connected, or just come up with different sayings. But theirs, it may just be their names, and it may also say Stronger Together.
Great, thank you. Okay, Cindy.
Okay. So for my part, I'm going to be sharing 3 activities that we introduce families to do during the family session. But before that, I thought we talk a little bit about, well, first of all, which of our families do we provide this type of service to? So in the intake, because we have an appointment with just the parents, and right now we're doing it, virtually or on the phone, especially for those that don't have computers. But there are specific questions that I usually ask. Do they have a computer, laptop, or tablet to do virtual sessions? Some of the families are starting to tell me that the kids, because they're doing school at home, they have laptops, but they're not able to download our app. So most of the time we can't use that device. The other question is, do they have a smartphone? Because you're still able to do virtual sessions if they have a smartphone. But if the answer is no to both these questions, then we provide our services and support via family sessions. So before I schedule a pre-session phone call with them, right now, Wonders and Worries, we're mailing them supplies for the family sessions. But if you're not able to, because I'm finding too, when I talk to the parents, and this is the second thing on the slide, is that some of these families do not even have the basic supplies. So you have to check, make sure that they have the basic supplies for your activity. Like, for example, the first activity I'm going to talk about, a family strengths garden. Some of these families don't have access to rocks, don't have a permanent marker. So you have to check. But then along with the activities, I'm also going to talk about modifications in case they don't have these supplies. What other supplies can they use that are commonly found at home? And then we provide the handouts for the family sessions. If the family has email, then we can email the parent the activity handout for the family session. But if they do not have email, then I end up mailing the activity handout to the parents for the family session. Or if you're able to text them a picture of the activity handout, you can do that as well. Then I schedule the pre-session with the parent. Once I know that they have the supplies they need and the activity handouts, then I talk to them and I go over the instructions that are a part of that activity handout. And with teens and preteens that I was previously working in person with, I also get on the phone and talk to them because I feel like this demonstrates how we're going to continue our support to them. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the first activity. Okay, so the first activity, and actually I'm talking about 3, but all these activities, I'm going to go over, we do them. Activities you can do with children in the hospital, via virtual sessions, and in support groups too. So the first one is called a family rock garden. And the goals for this activity is identifying the strengths of the family and to discuss how the strengths of the family will help them cope with a family member being ill. So you invite the family to find rocks for each family member or at least one large one that they can all write on. And then, and I usually tell the parents to wash and dry the rocks before the family session. And then, you know, have the parent invite everybody to write the strengths on each of the rocks. Then identify a place that the family's going to put all of these rocks together to create their family garden. And then, you know, it'll be a place where they can, it'll be like a reminder of the strengths that will help them through the illness experience. Now, on the second slide, we also included modifications. Other activity modifications is that you can also use rocks to include things that are causing them stress, that are weighing them down. So you can, you know, do it in that same session or in a second session. And then either add these rocks to the family rock garden or find a place, you know, maybe an open field or water, a pond, that they can choose to throw these rocks into the water or the open field. At the bottom, you know, some of the families that I've worked with, they don't have access to rocks or, you know, a park close by. So another way that you can do this activity is the picture includes a long branch. So at least have a long branch or maybe a hanger, and they can maybe gather leaves from outside or create their own leaves from paper. And on these leaves, write down the strengths for their family. And then they can hang these from either the hanger or the branch, and they can use string, wire, pipe cleaners, or even you know, the bread ties that most of us have. Okay, now the second activity is called a feelings balloon game. And so in this activity, we you know, invite the family to use one balloon, write different feeling words on it. You know, I put on this one happy, sad, worried, silly, confused, and really have the family together identify the feelings, put it on the balloon, and then they get together in a circle, and then they'll start following. Well, I don't, actually with this activity, sorry, they throw it to each other, and wherever they catch it, wherever their thumb lands closest to, then that's the feeling they talk about. So if my thumb landed on worried, then I talk about a time that I felt worried. And you just keep having them throw the balloon around until most of the feelings have been talked about. Now, another way that you can use this activity is by using several balloons. And each balloon has a different feeling. Like this one has happy, has worried, and I have a third balloon that says sad. Now, I love doing this activity, and actually the picture in the slide is one of a girl that I'm working with, and I just had her do this activity from her chair. You know, you start, you know, it's a fun game, but, you know, they're sharing their feelings. So you have them start out with a balloon, and they volley the balloon. And when the balloon drops, that's when they talk about, they share about a time when they felt worried. Then, you know, you add a second balloon, and they start following those balloons. And as soon as one balloon, they share a feeling of the balloon that dropped. So this balloon said happy. And then, you know, especially if you're working with teenagers, you add a third balloon. And so then you're following 3 balloons. And as soon as one hits the floor, then you talk about that feeling. And the first balloon that landed was worried. Now, I have done this activity, like the picture says, indicates, I've done it with virtual sessions. I've introduced it to families to be used during family sessions, but also I've done it with support groups with middle schoolers and high schoolers, and they love this game. You know, I usually do it at the beginning, so it really sets the tone for the group, and really laughing and sharing about it. Okay, so the second slide is modification, this feelings balloon game. So as I mentioned, you know, with older kids, you use multiple balloons. in the picture, it shows a little girl with a beach ball. So if the family for some reason doesn't have balloons and you're not able to actually mail them supplies, then ask them, do you have a beach ball? Do you have other soft balls? Most families have soft balls that they can use for this activity. If they don't, everybody has socks, so they can make sock balls, maybe in different colors, and they can do this game that way. With this beach ball, one thing that we started doing is, instead of adding the words on the beach ball, we've added numbers. So that way, when you're using the beach ball and your thumb lands closest to a certain number, and then on a piece of paper, you can have down, feelings, questions, or later on, you can modify it to something different. And you can reuse that ball that has the numbers. Okay, so the second slide, the third activity. Okay, the third activity is called a family's favorite game coping activity. So we invite the family to use a game that they already have at home. Candyland, Uno, lots of families have Uno. But if they don't, they can use regular playing cards, or they can use dice. And for example, with the Uno game, the way I've played it before is that whenever a color has to be changed, then we also mail them coping skills questions, and then the family cuts out the little cards. Whenever we have to change a color in the Uno game, then they have to get a question that they answer. And what I've told parents is that when somebody in your family answers a question, if anybody else wants to address that question, they can answer it too. And let's see. And in this activity, they can also talk about how, stress feels in certain parts of their body. Do they feel it in their head, their stomach? Just leave it open and allow the kids and the teens and the family members to share. So modifications to this activities, we're going to talk about those in the next slide. So as I mentioned before, you can use, a regular deck of cards. So a very popular game with this is called Crazy Eights. And, it's played very similarly to Uno. You're just matching the number and the suits. But then when they get an 8 card, it's wild. And you have to change the suit. And then, or the family can just decide when they're going to draw a coping skills question. Then you can also add other cards to include fun challenges. So for example, having a staring contest, a thumb war, a crab wall race with the person next to you, just to add some movement, especially if you have younger children. In addition to this activity, it really allows a time where as a family, you can talk about coping tools, and you can, use these family sessions or family time to introduce other coping activities. So for example, going for a walk outside, listening to music, having a little dance party, allowing everybody to share what they're doing, and then, maybe including it in a schedule, a daily schedule or a weekly schedule. And at the bottom of this slide, we included questions, sample questions, coping skills sample questions. So questions would include what bugs you or bothers you the most, what does stress feel like to you, what makes you laugh, what do you do when you can't fall asleep? But we have a long list of different questions, and questions that are more appropriate for younger kids and ones that are for older teens. Okay, the next slide. Okay, so I included tips and considerations for successful family sessions, because really that's the ultimate goal. We are providing these activities and handouts, but what is going to make a successful family session? That is our biggest goal. Good communication is key. So, as Kim mentioned before, via text, via phone, but because of less access to technology, usually I'm finding phone calling is what I'm doing more. But so I schedule phone calls to parents about every 2 weeks, and I put it in my schedule so I know, okay, today this is something that I have to do. I'm making a phone call to this family. A phone call may include checking if the family has received supplies, especially if you're sending them to the family. Scheduling that pre-session with the parents. And I usually give the families about a week and a half to do the family session. And then I'll schedule the post-session with the parents to talk about how it went. And then the other thing that we have found is that trying the activities yourselves can be very successful. And, so all the activities that we have done virtually or that we introduce to families through family sessions, we have done before. It just makes it much easier. You can make sure that you're including more details and allows you to plan, what are going to be issues for the family, what's going to work best. And then the second thing, which is on the second slide, is these are other things that I have found that when I'm talking to the parents, I'm having them kind of really, actually, we discuss it in our pre-session, family session to help them plan. So for example, what is the best day and time of the session for everyone? When is it a time when the kids don't have school? Maybe the afternoon. When is it a time when like both parents will be there? Where is the best location to have the family session? Is there going to be a need for a table and chairs if you're playing a game? Or if you're playing the game with the balloons, you don't need a table. Then talk about an estimate time for the session. If they are choosing to do one activity, it's going to take, about 30 minutes. And then make sure that they have gathered all the necessary supplies. I let them know, you really want to do that before the session. Perhaps get a box or a basket and put everything together. And then before the session, and this is something that we're learning as staff before a virtual session, so it helped me to really think about, okay, these are things that the families have to think about too, is that before the sessions, minimize your distractions. Some families, maybe they have the TV on. Tell them, make sure that TV is turned off. So everybody's focused and there during the activity. Think about, if they have younger kids, who's going to take care of the younger kids, or how can we include them so that way they have some role in the activity.
Cindy, can I jump in with a question quickly here?
Yes.
So just as you presented this to families to conduct a session on their own at home, or Kim, if you have an answer for this as well, have you had any families feel uncomfortable about doing that, or maybe pushback? That's probably not the best word, but say, oh, I don't want to do, like, I don't know if I can or want to do that therapeutic intervention with my family without you there, or what kind of experience have you guys had with that? I'll unmute you both so you can both answer.
Okay. Well, that's a good question, because we have given the families a choice. One day very soon we're going to open again, so we've given the families a choice. Do they want to go ahead and do the family sessions now? We're going to send you instructions and supplies, but some families have chosen to do it later. So the families that I'm working with, helping them through the family sessions, are families that they wanted to start the support for their children now. So they are actually very open and very eagerly listening to, how to better plan the session and what else do they need to have everything ready. So.
And I can add to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can add to that in that I've talked with several families who are really interested and eager, but then find it really challenging to follow through. And so, I'll plan a follow-up call and check in and find that they haven't, been able to do the family session, and other things have kind of come up. There's a a family that I've been talking with, a mom that I've been talking with over the last several weeks, and we thankfully don't have many clients who have come to Wonders and Worries where the parent is in the hospital with coronavirus and children are at home. But this one family, that is the situation, and dad has been very sick and on a ventilator. And so I've been checking in with the mom regularly. And initially, she was really interested in hearing about some things that she could be doing with her 3 children at home. But I kind of, in the back of my mind, I was just kind of trusting my instincts that I just don't think that she's at a place where she's going to be able to try these things yet. And that's been true. I've given her ideas and I've sent her resources, but really what she's needed is just those regular check-ins to just see, you know, what's happening now? How can I help you talk further with your children? What questions or concerns do you have as a parent? And then I spoke with her again just yesterday, and thankfully her husband is improving. And now she kind of seems to have the brain space and the ability to take next steps and maybe follow through more. So we'll see what happens there. But the other thing that I will add is that we've also been using these family sessions with families who are ongoing families with us. So it's been really great with new families coming to us who don't want to wait. But the example I gave of the little girl who is having meltdowns every day and running to her room, we did schedule a virtual check-in session, and so I was able to see her in session, but I also gave the information to her mom about doing the family rock garden activity. And her mom was really hoping for ways that she could better connect with her daughter. And so I gave her the information about the family rock garden activity initially, and then we realized they don't have rocks. And so I said, well, let's also talk about the balloon activity, the feelings balloon activity. And she's like, we have a balloon, we have balloons, we can do that right away. And so I provided the information there, and she was just really excited about her daughter connecting with her, which is of course what we all want. We all want to empower parents and to not be needed. So they jumped right in and had that balloon game activity, which went really well, and her daughter was so excited to play a game and talk about her feelings with her parents. And then we actually have the ability to send rocks, so we have rocks on the way for this family to do the rock garden activity. And with them, I was guiding mom with that modification of having some rocks designated as those things that are really weighing them down or weighing their daughter down, but they can all participate as a family and really identifying stressors and then absolutely identifying strengths and focusing on their strengths and what will get them through this, both individually and as a family. Missy, are there other questions about the activities that have come up?
Yes, so I was just going to say, let me get there. So Claire says, hi, these are such great therapeutic activities. Have you been able to guide parents to do any diagnosis / treatment, education / clarification through these family sessions? If you want to start?
I can start, Cindy, and then you can add.
Okay.
So yes and no. So we have always guided parents through having diagnosis conversations with their children. And so typically the way that we go about that is we'll have a conversation with the parent, give them language, kind of help prepare them, help them think through the things that they're most concerned about, just all the conversations that all of you as child life specialists have with parents. And then we'll send them resources. So we have tip sheets, and then we now on our website, if you haven't been on our website in a while or ever, under our For Parents tab, illness discussion resources, we have a variety of videos and activities as well as tip sheets for helping parents do just that, talk with their children or guide them through activities at home. Our favorite activity that we regularly talk parents through is creating what we call a Wonders and Worries jar, but it could be a Wonders and Worries cup or bowl or box. but just that process of children asking, you know, those questions, what are they wondering about? And then identifying those worries. What are they worried about related to the diagnosis and the treatment? So that's been an activity that we've always done, and we're certainly continuing to do now. Anything else, Cindy, that comes to mind?
Well, something that I'm discovering is that when I'm making these several phone calls to these families, you know, just to check on different things, I'm also, you know, building like a relationship with them. So I'm finding the parents, if something medically changes, or, you know, they'll give me a phone call and say, you know, Cindy, this is coming up. How can I explain this to the kids? And so it's a different level of support, you know, current consultation, but I think all the several phone calls that I'm making is really helping develop my relationship with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to add with the last activity that Cindy talked about, the game and the coping skills question cards. We will be sending you all the questions that we've come up with, but just know that, I mean, you all have amazing ideas and you can create your own questions, but families can absolutely create their own questions. And so another modification is just for the family to create the questions first. That can be their initial kind of time together, and then they can play the game. If there's no way to email or mail, you may not be able to mail something to a family. You can just over the phone go over some questions and, you know, have the parent write them down and just start to create their own coping skills questions. But I really love adding the physical activity piece of it, and really just making it fun, because that keeps, well, all of the kids, but certainly the younger children engaged. So we shared a few ideas there, but I'm sure you all have many others, you know, a rock, paper, scissors war, or just all sorts of, you know, funny, fun ways for the family to kind of challenge each other in the midst of doing the other game that they're doing.
Great. So I just want to remind that everyone out there, if you have questions, go ahead and type those in. I'll keep monitoring those and presenting those to Kim and Cindy as we move forward. We have, looks like maybe about 13 more minutes. But what I'm wondering to both of you is, it's a little bit of an aside, but definitely sort of in these times, as we're talking about phone consultation being so important, you know, we have the helpline at Wonders and Worries. What could you maybe share an example of a call or the types of calls you have been getting on there, or just something to that effect, to let people know how that consultation process over the phone, sort of when you get a cold call, can look?
Absolutely. So going back to like the first slide that we shared with some of the common things, it is a lot of calls with newly diagnosed parents or end-of-life situations. And it's not always the parent who calls. It might be another professional. We've guided hospital chaplains and social workers who work in adult hospitals who don't have a child life specialist there. And we've guided family friends just in giving them tips around how can they, you know, support this parent and family through this. So what I will say with those calls, and just a learning process that I've gone through after having been a child life specialist now over 25 years, is really focusing on that moment in time and treating that call as if it will be the only interaction. So for those of you who work in the ER, and I did a little bit of work in the ER, but most of my work as a child life specialist has been with chronic populations, so I'm much more used to, I'm going to have another opportunity to talk with this parent or work with this child. But those helpline calls and a lot of just our initial calls with parents, that's the only time we talk with the parent. And I think the key is in really trusting your instincts. It can be, at least for me, I want to share lots of information because I have all this information, but then I realize that parent can't absorb all of that information, and really just focusing on what would be most helpful for you right now. So I'll often ask, like, what's on your mind right now? How can I most help you in this moment? You know, what are you most concerned about as a parent? And then truly just focusing on that And then whenever possible, scheduling another call, or encouraging them and having them decide when they'll call back. So those are just a few tips, but it is a lot of end-of-life guidance, newly diagnosed guidance, and then going back to just the developmental piece and parents really trying, they just don't know if what they're seeing with their child is normal or something that they should be concerned about. And what I love and have always loved about what we do as child life specialists is we want to support parents and have them do some of these interventions and connect with children even and absolutely when it's not something they should be concerned about, when it is typical development, but to be preventative and to really add to their toolbox. So that's really exciting when I can say, like with the dad that I was talking with who was worried that his 13-year-old son now sleeping with a teddy bear was something to be concerned about. I could really validate that that wasn't anything to be concerned about, and then give him other ideas for ways he could support his son's natural grieving process. It's just so rewarding.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself there for a second. Here's a question from Christine. It's a little bit different from what we just been talking about. So how long are your clients on your caseloads for? I understand this is specific to the situation of the family, but on average, how long are you involved?
So we are involved oftentimes, I would say 6 months is a common length of time, but then we can be involved for many years. Our kind of typical process is an intake and then 6 sessions to build that foundation for coping, and then a follow-up parent consult with a plan going forward. So that can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, just depending, but usually more like 3 months. But then for many of our families, it's an ongoing illness situation. And so we transition then to maybe monthly check-in support. Maybe we have monthly check-in groups. So many children will transition to a monthly group option, but we might do individual check-in. Or we might just say, let's check in again when you have your surgery, or when you have your bone marrow transplant. So we have many families that we have been working with on some level for many years, but it's not weekly sessions. And we can maybe not see a client for a long period of time and then they plug back in. Anything to add to that, Cindy? Cindy does work with, she works with all sorts of client families, but she works with our Spanish-speaking clients and what we call underserved, which is just basically kind of that category of families that might be more economically disadvantaged and have additional stressors that they're dealing with. So, Cindy, I don't know if you want to talk to that piece and supporting those families.
Well, at the end of usually it's about 3 months when they're going through our curriculum, and we see them on a weekly basis. At the end, the parents want us to continue seeing them weekly because they feel like their child's being supported, their demeanor's changing, they seem happier, they seem to be able to better cope. But then, we want them to be able to use those tools. So we say, well, now why don't we try every 2 weeks? So we can continue seeing them, but the schedule's different. And then we also have a monthly teen group and, like Kim said, a monthly check-in group, so we can invite them to those, those groups.
Great, thank you. So I have a few more questions on here, but I also want to remind our participants that I'm seeing some great comments too that are coming through the Q&A, like some people sharing some things about their practice, and I see Jill Horn has done a lot with adults in a hospice setting, community-based. So I want you to know, though, that I will cut and paste this Q&A transcript and share that, so you'll all be able to see everybody else's comments about things. But I have a couple questions I'm going to present to our presenters in these last few minutes that we have. So the first one is from Bindi, and it says, I am wondering about the different qualifications of staff. These activities all seem to fit with the CCLS role, but I know that many of you also have play therapy training. Do you differentiate between what you actually do within these roles? Are there differences in how you approach?
Great question, Bindi. So we do have staff who can wear multiple hats. But within our role at Wonders and Worries, we stay within the scope of working as a child life specialist and within the scope of our practice as child life specialists. And, you know, we accomplish that in a variety of ways, but primarily through ongoing supervision. As a program director, I have the wonderful privilege of getting to support our team. And then we have our other program director of operations, Crystal Wilkins, who also supports our team. And Crystal and I both have counseling backgrounds, and Crystal is a registered play therapist as well. So we are able to really recognize kind of where does that line end and just help guide our staff. And we just do a lot of thinking about, you know, what hat are you wearing at Wonders and Worries, and, you know, case examples of, you know, when do we then transition a family to a traditional counselor or therapist or play therapist in the community. And then we have really strict rules around, currently we have one staff member who has a private practice, and we don't send our Wonders and Worries clients to her. Her private practice is separate from Wonders and Worries. It really is focused on children with illnesses and their siblings. And we work with children who have parents with illnesses. And so we keep it separate, and that is really important. And we are also regularly talking with parents. When we start from the very beginning with parents, we're talking about our role as child life specialists and how that differs from a traditional, you know, play therapist or counselor. And many of our parents, that's their lens. Like, they might refer to us as like the counselor, and that's okay as long as they do understand our limitations. And so they might be coming at it from, oh, I want my child to receive therapy from Wonders and Worries. And so we just gently help them understand that we're child development specialists, and our focus is on helping them understand, process, and cope with their parents' illness.
Great, thank you. I have a couple more questions. And let me just, we'll kind of keep going with the questions for a few more minutes, but I just want to point out to everyone that the QR code for the evaluation is on the screen. So if you need to go to another meeting or something and you need to sign off, you can click on that. But we're going to go ahead and answer just a few more of these questions. And we will leave the QR code up till about quarter after so that you have adequate time to scan it. But let me go to this question. Do you ever find that you have issues with parents calling you back? One of my roles is to check in with parents to offer emotional support following a pregnancy or infant loss. And I often find that many families are hard to reach.
Cindy, do you want to respond to that one?
Yes. So many times the parents do not call me back, but then I'll just say, okay, well, I'll call them like in 2 days. You know, our parents that we're working with, they just have so much on their plate. And now with social distancing, I just feel like the stress level is higher. So, but they're all very, when they answer, like, oh, hi, you know, and they welcome the phone call. The other thing is that I have found, especially if a parent's trying to juggle still working, I have learned I have to call them later. You know, I usually can't call them during the day. So I have to think about that too. And I also work on Saturdays. So Saturdays is usually like the best day for me to try to get a hold of them.
I think that's a really good point, Cindy, is as much as you can get information about the parent's life. We had a referral yesterday, and the referring professional, thankfully, was able to alert us that the dad works nights and sleeps until early afternoon. And so the best time to call is after 3 o'clock. So, but before 7 when he goes to work. So yeah, just kind of understanding what their flow is, and then letting go of those families that don't call back, like not carrying that with you as a professional, and just recognizing that it just, for whatever reason, isn't hitting the top of their priority list. And that's okay. We can only do what we can do.
Great. Here's a question from Jenny. Do you find you have questions or concerns from parents regarding healthy coping versus unhealthy coping, in quotes, or responses to grief? And how do you address concerns and explain to parents on the unique responses from children and teens?
I will say that's a great question and to come back next week for our WonderChat next week, because we will be talking about grief. The answer is yes, but I don't want to take too much time to respond. So that may be one that if you can't come back next week to watch the recorded webinar from next week's WonderChat.
Well, and I think that that is a perfect segue. It looks like we are, it is 2 o'clock. So I wanted to, first of all, thank Kim and Cindy for sharing their expertise and experience with us. I could listen to them talk all day, every day. I want you all know that, like I told you about the feedback and the QR code, and then share with you about our webinar for next week, which will be virtual support sessions for families who are grieving. We really do take the information that you share in the survey and try to incorporate it into what we might be offering next. And there was a lot of interest in this topic. So we will have 2 child life specialists from Wonders and Worries sharing that content, as well as a child life specialist from Children's in Dallas who works in the ICU. So we're hoping that you will be able to join us for that as well. So thank you very much. Thank you to Cindy and Kim for being with us. And y'all stay safe, stay well, and hopefully we'll see you next week.